All right, so we're back. And, a lot of you have been asking for a deep dive into the integumentary system.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, going through this college anatomy and physiology textbook,
Yeah.
it's been really interesting stuff, and I'm learning a lot. I think a lot of us, we think about skin and we just think about like the surface,
Right.
right? What we see, what we can touch. But trust me, there's a whole universe going on underneath.
It really is. It's like there's this whole bustling city down there
Yeah.
with all these different cells and structures, and they all have these specialized jobs to do.
It's way more than just a covering. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The textbook actually calls it a dynamic organ,
It is dynamic for sure.
and they stress the importance of dermatology.
Uh-huh.
And, that's the study and the treatment of the integumentary system.
Right. Yeah.
So I think by the end of this deep dive, you're going to understand the why behind so many things.
Oh, yeah.
Like why skincare is important, why sun protection is important, and even how certain medical conditions
Affect the skin.
yeah, it's like if you know how it all works, then you can take better care of it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So should we start with the epidermis?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so that's like the outermost layer of the skin, and most people think of it as like just one layer,
Yeah.
but it's actually made up of five distinct layers.
5 layers.
Yeah, it's kind of like a high-rise building for skin cells,
Oh, wow. Okay.
and each one has its own unique function. So
I'm guessing the bottom layer, the stratum basal, that's where all the action starts.
you got it.
Okay.
That's where the new keratinocytes are born. It's just like a little cell factory down there, just churning them out.
Keratinocytes.
Yeah, those are the cells that make up most of your epidermis.
Okay.
You can kind of think of them as like tiny little brick layers,
Yeah.
constructing this tough outer layer brick by brick.
Oh, okay. So then how do those brick layers actually create that barrier? The textbook mentions keratinization.
Right, keratinization, exactly.
Mhm.
So as those cells move up through the layers of the epidermis, they undergo this transformation.
It's like starting with soft clay and ending up with a hardened brick, They
Raw.
flatten out, they get all interlocked, and they fill up with keratin, which is this really tough protein that makes our skin waterproof and durable.
So the outermost layer, like the one that we see and touch the stratum corneum,
Mm-hmm.
that's basically a wall of these hardened cells.
Yeah, a wall of dead cells, to be precise.
Dead cells.
Yeah, it might sound kind of creepy, but it's absolutely crucial for protection. That stratum corneum is like a shield, and it's constantly shedding and being replaced by new cells pushing up from below.
So it's true what they say, we're constantly shedding skin,
Oh, yeah,
like all the time.
all the time.
It's mind-blowing to think that the average person sheds like a pound of skin cells every year.
I know, isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
It's a lot of skin.
No wonder my house gets dusty so quickly.
Right.
So among those busy little keratinocytes, we also find melanocytes in the epidermis.
Yes.
And those are the cells that are responsible for producing melanin, which is the pigment that gives our skin its color.
That's right.
Melanin, the stuff that makes us tan.
Yeah.
But it's way more than just, getting a summer glow, right?
Oh, absolutely. Melanin is our natural sunscreen.
Oh.
It's like having these tiny little umbrellas shielding our DNA from those harmful UV rays from the sun.
So I always wondered, why some people have darker skin than others. Does that mean they have more melanocytes?
That's a great question. Actually, no, everyone has roughly the same number of melanocytes.
Really?
Yeah, what differs is the activity of those cells and the type of melanin that they produce.
Interesting.
And, sunlight, it triggers both the darkening of existing melanin and the production of more melanin,
Oh,
which is why we tan.
so people with darker skin tones naturally have more active melanocytes even without sun exposure.
Exactly.
Wow, that's
Wow.
fascinating. Okay, so we've talked about the epidermis. Let's go deeper now,
Okay.
beyond the epidermis into the dermis.
All right, so the dermis is like the city supporting the epidermis above. You've got your blood vessels delivering all the nutrients.
Uh-huh.
You've got your nerves sending signals,
Right.
glands producing sweat and oil, and even those tiny muscles that give us goosebumps.
Goosebumps. Yeah, those always fascinated me. It's like our skin has a mind of its own.
I know, right? You know what else is fascinating about the dermis?
What?
It's where we find lines of cleavage, and that's the direction that collagen fibers are arranged.
Collagen. Isn't that what all the skincare products are raving about?
It is collagen and elastin fibers. They're like the scaffolding that gives our skin its youthful plumpness and resilience.
So as we age, those fibers break down,
Exactly.
and that's what leads to wrinkles and sagging.
That's right. That's why understanding this dermal structure is so important for anti-aging
Okay.
and even for surgical procedures.
Wait, what do surgeons have to do with collagen?
Well, they actually use their knowledge of these lines of cleavage when they're making incisions.
Yeah.
So by cutting parallel to these lines, they minimize the damage to the collagen fibers, which means less scarring and better healing.
It's amazing how understanding the structure of our skin
Yeah.
can have these like practical
I
applications.
know, right?
Okay, so we've got this bustling city of cells in the dermis,
Mm-hmm.
but it needs some essential services, right? Like, how do we stay cool?
That's where our sweat glands come in. And
Okay.
guess what? There's actually two types.
Two types of sweat glands.
Yep. Merocrine and apocrine.
What's the difference?
So merocrine glands, those are the workhorses. They're found all over our body, and they produce that watery sweat that helps regulate our body temperature.
So that's like our internal AC system.
Exactly.
What about apocrine glands? Are those the ones that are responsible for body odor?
You got it.
Okay.
Those are mainly concentrated in specific areas like your armpits and your groin.
Right.
And they become more active after puberty.
Oh.
And they produce a thicker type of sweat that bacteria just love to break down.
So that's why we get body odor.
Precisely.
So if you're wondering about the difference between antiperspirants and deodorants, you know, antiperspirants block the sweat production, while deodorants target the bacteria
Exactly.
that cause the stink.
That's right.
But let's not forget about hair.
Yes, hair.
Yeah.
Another amazing example of how our skin can generate these complex structures.
Yeah, so each hair is technically called a pilus.
Mm-hmm.
It's a slender filament made of keratinized cells,
Yeah.
and it grows from a follicle that extends deep into the dermis.
Right.
And here's a fun fact. The hair shaft, the part that we see, is actually dead.
Yeah, that's why haircuts don't hurt.
Yeah, exactly. And that dead hair shaft is surrounded by these layers.
Yes.
The medulla, the cortex, and the cuticle.
It's like a miniature rope with all these layers giving it strength and flexibility.
And don't forget those goosebump muscles, the erector pili muscles that are attached to each hair follicle.
Oh, yeah.
Ever wonder why you get goosebumps?
It's like a leftover reflex from our furry ancestors.
What do you mean?
Well, they used to fluff up their fur for warmth or to look bigger when they were threatened. But for us, it just gives us those little bumps on our skin.
Oh, that's interesting.
Speaking of incredible adaptations, let's move on to how our skin repairs itself.
Okay.
It's remarkably good at bouncing back from injuries.
The textbook outlines 4 stages of wound healing,
Mm-hmm.
but it seems like a pretty complex process, involving different cell types and signaling pathways.
It is. It's a very well orchestrated process, and there's actually a difference between regeneration, where damaged cells are replaced with the same type, and fibrosis, which forms scar tissue when regeneration isn't possible.
So the next time we get a cut or a burn, think about all the amazing things that are happening beneath the surface as our skin heals.
I know, right?
Okay, so speaking of time passing, what about aging? Our skin tells a story, doesn't it?
It does.
Mm.
Aging affects every part of the integumentary system.
Yeah.
Healing slows down collagen and elastin production, decrease the skin thins, and sweat production declines. Even our melanocytes age.
Oh.
Which is why we get gray hair and become more sensitive to the sun.
It's kind of wild to think that, the skin that we see is actually dead.
I know.
But hey, it's doing an amazing job protecting us.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But that does lead to an interesting question.
What's that?
If our skin is constantly renewing itself, why do we still see the effects of aging so visibly?
That is a great question, and one that we will need to explore further. But first, let's take a closer look at something that we often take for granted, the science behind skin color. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about how our skin ages, and it's fascinating how our skin renews itself, but it still shows the passage of time,
It's true.
So now let's get into something that I've always wondered about, like what actually determines our natural skin color?
Well, it's more intricate than you might think. Melanin obviously plays a big role. We talked about that being our natural sunscreen. But it's
Right.
not the only player. Hemoglobin and keratin also contribute to that beautiful range of skin tones that we see in humans.
Hemoglobin. Isn't that the stuff that carries oxygen in our blood?
The very same.
Mm.
And you know how it makes blood look red?
Yeah.
Well, for people with lighter skin, that reddish tint from the blood vessels in the dermis, it's more visible.
Oh.
It's kind of like you're seeing the plumbing beneath the surface.
Ah, so that's why some people blush so easily.
Exactly. Their skin is just showing that blood flow more readily.
Interesting. And then what about keratin?
So keratin, that's a yellow-orange pigment.
Mm.
You know how carrots and sweet potatoes have those vibrant colors?
Yeah.
That's keratin.
So eating lots of colorful fruits and veggies could actually give us like a healthy glow from the inside out.
It's possible carotene hangs out on the stratum corneum, that outer layer of the epidermis, and also in the fat layer beneath.
Okay.
Plus, it's a precursor to vitamin A,
Oh,
which is great for our vision.
talk about a win-win.
Right.
Okay, so back to melanin, though. The textbook mentions two types. Eumelanin and pheomelanin. Do these create different shades?
They do. Eumelanin gives us those brown and black hues,
Okay.
while pheomelanin contributes more reddish yellow tones.
Interesting.
So it's the ratio of these melanins plus how they're distributed in the skin that creates that amazing variety of skin tones we see.
Wow, it's incredible to think that these like tiny molecules can create such a stunning spectrum of colors.
It really is. And it reminds us that even with all these variations at the core, we all share the same basic biology.
That's a good point. Okay, so let's talk about nails now.
Okay.
They might not seem like a big deal, but they're part of the integumentary system too.
They are. It's easy to forget about them.
I never really thought of nails as like part of the skin, but it makes sense. They're like these tough little shields for our fingertips and toes.
Precisely. Each nail has a nail body, that's the pink part we see,
Uh-huh.
a free edge that we trim,
Right.
and a root that's embedded in the skin.
Okay, what about that whitish half moon shape at the base of the nail?
Oh, that's the lunula.
Allunula.
Yeah, and it looks whiter because the underlying layer of cells is thicker there, so it kind of obscures the blood vessels.
Interesting. The textbook also mentions the nail matrix. That's where the nail actually grows from, right?
You got it. The nail matrix is this special area under the root where cells divide and push the nail plate forward. It's like a tiny conveyor belt constantly building new nail.
Speaking of things that grow, let's talk about hair.
Our hair. Let's do it.
It's another amazing example of our skin's ability to create these like complex structures.
It really is, and it's almost everywhere on our bodies.
Yeah.
Except for a few spots like the palms of our hands, the soles of our feet, and our lips.
Oh, that's true.
Did you know that most of the hair on our body is actually not on our heads?
Really?
Yeah.
I would thought our head hair was the majority.
Nope. Most of it is vellus hair.
Vellus hair.
Yeah, that's that fine, short, and light-colored hair that covers most of our body.
Oh,
It's like peach fuzz.
so then what about the hair on our heads, eyebrows, and eyelashes?
That's terminal hair. It's coarser, longer, and usually more pigmented. And for guys, terminal hair also shows up on their face and other body areas after puberty.
Ah, yes, the beard and body hair that come with those teenage hormone surges.
Exactly. But no matter what type of hair it is, it all grows from a follicle,
Right.
a little pocket that goes deep into the dermis.
The textbook goes into a lot of detail about hair structure. It's actually more complex than I realized.
It is. Each hair has a bulb, a root, and a shaft.
Right.
The bulb is the living part down in the follicle where cells are dividing and pushing the hair upwards.
And the shaft, the part that we see that's actually dead.
That's right. Kind of like that outer layer of skin, the stratum corneum that we talked about earlier.
So it's all connected.
It is. And just like the skin hair goes through a growth cycle,
Oh.
there's the anagen phase where it's actively growing,
Uh-huh.
then a short catagen phase, and finally the telogen phase where the hair rests and eventually sheds.
So it's a continuous cycle.
It is, with new hair growing in to replace the old.
Which brings us back to that question we posed earlier. If our skin is constantly regenerating, why do we age?
It's a complex question, but the answer lies in the fact that even though our skin renews itself, the rate and the quality of that renewal decline as we get older.
So it's like a machine that slowly wears down, even with regular maintenance.
That's a great analogy. Cellular processes become less efficient. Those collagen and elastin fibers we talked about earlier, they break down faster than they're replaced.
Right.
And the skin's overall structure weakens.
So it makes you appreciate that aging is a natural process. It's a gradual shift at the cellular level, but it's not like we're powerless, right? We can still take care of our skin.
Absolutely. Protecting our skin from the sun, staying hydrated, eating a healthy diet, and managing stress, all those things can make a big difference in how our skin ages.
This deep dive has been incredible. We've learned so much about what's happening beneath the surface of our skin.
I know, it's amazing, isn't it?
But we're not done yet.
There's still more to explore. Up next, we'll delve into that fascinating world of sweat glands, oil glands, and other specialized structures that keep our skin functioning at its best.
Stay tuned. Welcome back to our deep dive into the integumentary system. We've gone from like those microscopic layers of the epidermis
Yeah.
to the crazy science of hair growth and skin color. And now it's time to get into Something we don't often think about, the world of glands.
Right. The skin is like teeming with these tiny but mighty structures, each
Yeah.
one with a very specialized job to do.
So we already talked about sweat glands,
Mm.
those essential regulators of body temperature.
Yeah.
But there's more to uncover.
Oh, definitely.
Right. We learned that there are two main types, merocrine and apocrine.
Mm-hmm.
The merocrine glands are like our personal AC units,
Exactly.
producing that watery sweat all over our bodies to keep us cool.
And remember, those glands are controlled by the nervous system,
Oh,
which explains why we sweat when we're hot or feeling stressed.
it's like our skin is reacting to what's going on inside our bodies and in the world around us.
It is.
You mentioned that, merocrine sweat isn't just water, it also contains other stuff.
Oh, yeah. It's got electrolytes, metabolites, even waste products.
Oh, wow.
And that slightly acidic pH of sweat,
Ugh.
it helps to keep certain bacteria from growing out of control.
So sweating isn't just about cooling down, it's also a way of protecting our skin from those microbes
Exactly.
that are always trying to get in.
Right.
Pretty clever.
Nature is full of clever designs.
So now on to apocrine sweat glands, the ones that sometimes get a bad rap for causing body odor.
Yeah.
We talked about how these glands, mainly hang out in specific areas like the armpits and groin,
Mm-hmm.
and they become more active after puberty.
Right.
But why do they produce that thicker sweat that bacteria just love to break down?
Well, while body odor isn't always welcome in our modern world, these glands might actually play a role in signaling and communication,
Really?
especially when it comes to attraction. It's like a subtle scent language that we may not even be aware of.
Wow. So even our sweat has a story to tell.
It does.
Okay, moving on to sebaceous glands.
Right?
Those are the ones that produce sebum, right?
Yes.
What exactly is sebum and what does it do?
So sebum is this oily, waxy substance that keeps our skin and hair from drying out and becoming brittle. Think of it as our body's natural moisturizer.
So it's like a built-in skincare product.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And usually sebaceous glands, they're buddies with hair follicles,
Oh.
discharging their sebum into the follicle, which then coats the hair shaft.
The textbook mentioned that sebum also has like antibacterial properties.
It does. It helps to control the growth of bacteria on the skin, but there's a downside.
Wow.
If a sebaceous gland gets blocked, it can lead to those annoying infections like folliculitis or even boils.
So that's a good reminder to wash our faces and avoid picking at blemishes.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered sweat glands and oil glands. Are there any other types of glands we should know about?
Well, there are a few specialized ones. For example, ceruminous glands. Have you heard of those?
Ceruminous glands.
Ooh.
Not ringing a bell.
They're the tiny factories in our ear canals that produce cerumen, more commonly known as earwax.
Oh, earwax. Most people think of it as, something gross, but it actually serves a purpose, right?
Absolutely. It's a natural defense system for our ears.
Yeah.
It tracks dirt and other particles, prevents bugs from crawling in, and even lubricates the eardrum.
Wow. It's amazing how our bodies have these built-in mechanisms to protect us.
I know, right?
So last but not least, let's talk about mammary glands.
All right, mammary glands, those are the ones responsible for milk production.
Right.
They're actually modified sweat glands, specifically apocrine sweat glands, that have evolved to perform this incredible function.
It's a beautiful example of how, a simple gland structure can be adapted for something so complex and vital.
Nature is full of these amazing examples of adaptation and specialization.
Well, this deep dive into the integumentary system has been truly eye-opening.
I agree.
It's incredible how much is going on beneath the surface of our skin.
I know, right?
All working together to keep us healthy and functioning.
We often take our skin for granted.
We do.
But as we've discovered, it's far more than just a covering. It's a dynamic organ that plays a crucial role in our overall well-being.
From protecting us from the environment, to regulating our temperature, sensing the world around us, and even playing a part in communication, our skin truly is remarkable.
This deep dive has been a great overview, but it's just the beginning.
Right.
There's a whole world of fascinating information out there waiting to be explored.
So the next time you look in the mirror, remember that you're seeing more than just a reflection.
Mm-hmm.
You're seeing a complex and fascinating system that's essential for life.
Keep that curiosity alive and keep exploring the wonders of the integumentary system.
Yes.
There's always more to learn.
Until next time, stay curious and keep on learning. Thanks for joining us.
Hi.